Alcatraz. They used to call it Evil Island. And we were about to find out why.
Mob of the Dead, a map that never seems to be absent from the ever-discussed top 5 zombie maps, but I seriously think it is still underappreciated in another domain. Maps that were, quote, important for the development of zombies are usually mentioned to be earlier, less complex maps like Nacht, Der Riese, and Kino der Toten. But it's pretty rare to hear someone make the argument that Mob is one of the most important maps in Call of Duty Zombies. What if I were to tell you that Mob of the Dead is responsible for everything you think of as zombies today? All your favorite Black Ops 3 maps, the community, the creators, literally all of it might not exist if it wasn't for Mob of the Dead. And so, ladies and gentlemen, today we'll be telling the story of how this map not only saved a series, but also dawned the golden age of zombies. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Zombies Retrospective. Today we'll be analyzing the iconic Alcatraz Zombies map, Mob of the Dead. To understand the importance of Mob, we first need to back up a little bit and look to the maps which preceded it. Previous was Die Rise, a lackadaisical and uninspired mess. Before Die Rise was Transit, a broken, unthoughtful disaster. A year before in Black Ops 1 was Moon, the most polarizing zombies map of all time, and finally behind Moon, Shangri-La, a challenging, unforgiving map that many players despised. And see, it's here, when you step back and look at the previous batting average of zombies, that you start to understand where the community was at. For zombies, there was a really low average between the previous 4 maps, even to the more positive crowd. And I think it was at this point where zombies was walking a precarious line. See, the maps were expanding and the series was trying to adapt. They needed to evolve from the likes of Kino, Call of the Dead, or Ascension, but nothing had really come close to nailing this new format. And this pushed many OG players away from the game. See, up to here you have to remember that the zombies community was mostly full of Black Ops 1 fans of the OG smaller scale maps. And so these big, daunting, unenjoyable maps weren't what the community viewed zombies as. Their mind frame of zombies is completely different to how you might view it today. And these players had to base this new format off of Transit and Die Rise, and so there were a lot of people in the community that were giving up on zombies. That was until Mob of the Dead. And so that brings us to the question, what makes Mob just so good? Well, above all, Mob of the Dead excels at atmosphere and storyline. Before you even step into the map, Mob hooks you with the intro cutscene, introducing you to some of the best characters to grace the series. It's seriously one of the most effective storytelling pieces in COD Zombies, managing to convey the entire premise of the map.
Hey Sal, we must have been through this 50 times already.
And we'll go through it another 50 if that's what it takes.
So the opening line establishes a discourse between Finn and Sal, very clearly displaying that Sal is the leader of the group while Finn is his right-hand man. We then get to see Sal DeLuca interact with the guard Ferguson. He's friendly and amicable, but we see there's a level of manipulation within his kindness. Sal has managed to gain the guard's trust through flattery, conveying to us both his competence as a leader and his charismatic ability. He's deviously charming. And this is made no more clear than in the iconic "Ain't That Swell" line.
Ain't that swell?
And so in 11 seconds, the writers are able to convey exactly who Sal DeLuca is, and his charm even manages to win us, the audience, over. Now, next, the guard walks past Finn. Finn has also managed to win the guard's trust, but it's in the complete opposite way to Sal. Lacking any charm whatsoever, Finn is just straight up to Ferguson. He promises to share any leads in the upcoming horse race, but he isn't trying to be a friend either. What you see is what you get here. And while While rough, Finn also manages to win the respect with the audience. Now third, the guard walks by Billy Handsome, to which Billy instantly supports the use of violence towards a seemingly hurt inmate. This, along with him literally being silhouetted in shadows, conveys the darkness within Billy. But not only does this establish Billy as a character, it's here where we see a tone shift. This intro cutscene takes a dark turn, and then finally it hits its darkest character, Al Arlington. Al manipulates the guard into opening his cell and then brutally murders him. This not only shows us the darkness within Weasel, but it flips what we just thought we knew about Finn and Sal. These likable characters are the one who set up the plan, and so they bear the responsibility of the murder. Weasel uses lies and deceit to achieve his ends, but the others are equally as guilty for the crime. And so it's here, in the opening 59 seconds, where we see gray characters for the first time in Call of Duty Zombies. These aren't caricaturistic stereotypes, but people with deep, gross flaws. And despite those flaws, they still have redeeming and likable qualities. It brings a depth to Call of Duty Zombies that we had never seen before. The rest of the cutscene goes on to further these ideas and shows the character's selfishness and overall establishes the premise of the map. And so in these 3 minutes, Mob of the Dead defines itself. It's a story first and a video game second. And this is the fundamental reason as to why we remember this map and its characters so fondly. But setting-wise, the map itself is also a masterpiece, and this is equally as important to its success. For what is essentially just a prison, Mob manages to set out some very different locations while still managing to keep a consistent tone throughout. You spawn in Afterlife mode. It's got a very dreamy, ghost-like feeling to it. As your Afterlife meter will run out, tension builds and you revive yourself, in which things are resolved with another amazing sound effect. You then find yourself in a cell block, which is exactly what you'd expect, except it's just got loads of dark additions. But then every other area from here is equally as perfect and manages to feel detailed, important, and unique. The infirmary has weird, creepy voices. The warden's office looks like a satanic cult recently visited. The docks feel somber with fireworks seen off in the distance, and the bridge has one of the best soundtracks ever featured in Zombies. In fact, Mob was actually the first map to actually have different music or noises depending on the location. And while this would be seen in Buried in Origins, this is a feature that would not make it to Black Ops 3. Other things like the round change noise and sound of Brutus spawning in are two other amazing sound effects which only further immerse the player. Mob of the Dead's atmosphere manages to weave its way into the storyline like no map has ever done. But what makes Mob truly a step above anything else that we had seen before is that it couples this depth with amazing gameplay and innovation. First of all, Mob saw a brand new way to explore the map with the introduction of Afterlife. This purgatory mode works in many ways. It gives you access to perk machines, drops, new parts of the map, and most importantly, plane parts. It also allows you to revive yourself, removing quick revive and opening up another perk slot. And third, it adds depth to the storyline. This fundamental gameplay mechanic is entrenched in the fact that your characters are stuck here forever. And so it's this blending of storyline and gameplay that immerses players like no map has ever done. But Mob delivers so much more. It's the first true quest-styled map, which would come to be such a beloved format in Black Ops 3. So as you play through, you've essentially got two main goals: dogs and parts, which usually plays something like this. Leave spawn, zap the machine to get the key, feed the cell dog, do the laundry spin cycle, get the sheet. Feed the infirmary dog, head to the docks, get the fuel canister, turn on jug, and feed the docks dog. Shock the three machines, enter the code in the tower tunnel, get the ropes, grab your Hell's Retriever, pick up the engine in the warden's office, head to the rooftop, and build the plane. Oh, and did I mention you then fly to the Golden Gate Bridge, pack a punch, and kill yourself to repeat the cycle once again. Yeah, and so here, again, we have more storyline entrenched into the gameplay. Overall, it's a pretty fantastic quest that really feels true to the prison setting of Mob. While complicated, it's not too hard, and once you get the hang of it, really any player should be able to do it. But my complaint with this setup is that it's very linear, and you're forced to do it. Sure, there are a few different routes to take, but ultimately every single game's first 10 rounds are going to play out the same. The played part quest is mandatory, and while it's not the most painstaking quest we ever see in Zombies, I can certainly see why some dislike it. The game developers took a huge risk by forcing the storyline's narrative to coincide with the gameplay this closely, and overall it's a risk that did pay off. Again, it sort of gives you the feeling that you're playing through a movie rather than a video game where you actually have choices. Still though, they're lacking any casual aspect. I think they should have made the grief cell block into a survival map for people who just wanted that casual zombies. There is no casual way to play Mob, and this alienates a big part of the community. But still, we have more positives. Mob of the Dead saw a ton of new weapons. The Tommy Gun, Uzi, AK-47, and Death Machine were 4 exclusive weapons added to this map. That is fantastic, and not something you would see in Black Ops 3. I really feel like this weapon diversity adds a lot in making Mob feel special. The box, which by the way looks beautiful, is truly unique, and there's an extra incentive in hitting it to get those unique weapons. Of course, the Blundergat is a lot of people's all-time favorite wonder weapon. I think what makes it so great is its variation. The Blundergat is 4 weapons in one, with 2 upgrade trees that end in the same place. Plus, you can get 2 of them. The packed Blundergat becomes the Sweeper, an ultra-powerful shotgun with more range than you would ever need on such a tight map. Or you can get the Acid Gat first, an explosive green goop shooter. Now, ultimately doing both in either order will lead to the Vitrolic Withering, a more powerful version of the Acid Gat with a monkey bomb-like effect. It is really good, and using it with a shield, electric cherry, speed cola, double tap, and jug makes you near invincible. Which, despite my normal hesitation for OP weapons, it always has seemed to work on Mob. Sure, it makes things easy, but it's not the most effective killing weapon. Mob is really tight, and so the Vitrolic Withering often ends up playing more like an upgraded crossbow rather than the game-breaking Apothicon Servants on Revelations. The only complaint I have about this weapon is that I wish it had 2 full trees. Keep the Acid Gat, then Pack-a-Punch version of the Vitrolic Withering, but change the Sweeper progression. Let's have the Acid Gat to Pack-a-Punch create the Vitrolic Withering. But if you Pack-a-Punch first, getting the Sweeper, and then Acid Gat it becomes something else. I've always daydreamed about a shotgun that basically would just shoot a giant green mist and like incinerate everything. Kind of like a thunder gun, but it shoots acid. It's just a little fan fiction of mine, but overall the Blundergat is fantastic. And last but not least, there's the Hell's Retriever. Upgraded into the Hell's Redeemer, this tomahawk was so iconic it inspired the likes of Derizen Drax's bow step, along with the secondary effect of the upgraded Apothicon sword. This is one of the most beautiful, cool, and fun weapons we see in Zombies history, and it's yet another piece which makes Mob of the Dead so great. But like with everything, Mob of the Dead is not perfect, and I have 2 critiques. The first is actually quite simple: perk variety. Mob of the Dead teases both PhD Flopper and Mule Kick, but it's not possible to actually get them. Replacing Quick Revive with Afterlife was a great way to open up a perk slot, but I see no reason why these 2 perks couldn't have also been added. PhD wouldn't make the Vitrolic Withering more OP, and that's because you would have to sacrifice one of the other 4 necessary perks that make that combo so OP in the first place. And as for Mule Kick, I mean, who wouldn't want a 3rd gun? Stamina Up is also sorely missed on this map. With those fuel canisters, sometimes you gotta do a lot of running, and it would really help training in tighter areas as well. I love Electric Cherry as a perk, but seeing as Deadshot is the obvious worst choice, this means that every single game you'll have to use the same 4 perks. It's just an odd mistake that easily could have been fixed. But the big flaw with Mob is the Easter egg itself. The Easter egg requires you to fly to the bridge 2 more times, locate 5 blue skulls with the Hell's Retriever, shock a spoon in Afterlife, put it in a bathtub, and then enter 4 codes into the number panel in the tunnels. That's it. And the main problem isn't even that it's easy, but that it's repetitive. Both the panels and the plane are part of the main quest, and doing them again adds nothing new. This really is a huge oversight from the game developers, in my opinion. For a map that has so much detail, it blows me away that they couldn't have done something more interesting. Now, thematically, it works, as it shows how the characters are stuck in an infinite loop, flying to the bridge over and over, but it just kind of feels like filler that isn't necessary. In fact, the initial building of the plane is tied to the storyline so well, I wouldn't even mind if you only had to do it once for the Easter egg. It would make the Easter egg even easier, but I kind of prefer ease to boredom. Overall, this Easter egg is lacking, and while I like that it's one of the easier eggs, I wish they could have added a little bit more. I think it certainly would have been easy to tie another step into Afterlife. Still though, credit where credit is due, Mob's ending is fantastic. After entering in the 4 prisoner numbers, you get a 5-part audio tape throughout the prison. Stanley Ferguson himself starts narrating the events of the mobster's escape plan. Players learn that their plan never really happened, and instead the 3 murdered Al Arlington on top of the roof when things fell apart. It's a shocking revelation which confirms what is hinted through audio quotes in the entire map. The 4 are stuck in purgatory forever to pay for their sins. And then from here, the players fly to the bridge for a final time and fight. Brutus and the zombies then help Al, and if the other 3 die, the cycle is broken. The 4 escape their hell and are finally able to rest. It's a really cool ending that ties the storyline together neatly, and I for one love it. There's just so much complication to the overall zombie storyline, and this tiny little microcosm is a blip in the universe that needs no outside knowledge or understanding. And honestly, I could gush over the mob storyline and its characters for another 20 minutes, but I'll keep it short. Al Arlington has some of the most interesting monologues in all of zombies.
Still, wouldn't you like to know what it feels like to be respected?
He talks about his insecurities and his fears, and I love how the game lets you see this vulnerable side of one of its characters. Before this, Zombies characters were always so over the top, and this is the first time we get to see a real human. While the entire voice crew is superb, Joe Pantoliano's voice acting on Al is fantastic. I never even liked Weasel until I really listened to his lines, and over the years he grew to be one of my favorite characters. While we would see grayness and depth added to even our main 4 in the premise storyline, for the short amount of time that Al is given, I genuinely don't think there is a character that is fleshed out as well as Al Arlington. And so character depth is another thing which all started here. So, not only is Mob of the Dead a fantastic map, but it brought about a shift in how people viewed zombies. It came to be the successful transition into a more storyline-centered view of the game, which would also house deeper gameplay. It came to be the successful transition into a more storyline-centric formula, which would also house deeper gameplay. Mob of the Dead marks the turning point, where zombies would leave behind the immature characters and stale gameplay and move into something more developed and polished. This formula, the quote Jason Blundell map, is the foundation for all of Black Ops 3, and so by proxy is what led to the rekindling of zombies. Not just for the game, but for the community as a whole. Z-House, Easter eggs for charity, Zombies World Championship. None of this may have happened if zombies had failed to adapt. Mob of the Dead showed that the community was ready for more, and I think it gave Treyarch the confidence to push their skills to the very limits as creators. And so whether you enjoy Mob of the Dead or not, at least appreciate it as the first domino to fall in what would begin the golden age of zombies. My final rating for Mob of the Dead is a 9.7 out of 10. Double S tier.